Some of the top challenges that startups, but especially corporate startups, have when pursuing scalable growth are in the first phase on a strategy level. How can you simultaneously pursue differentiation at lower cost to your clients? Meaning, how can you open up a new market space that is not your typical red ocean of highly contested market players, where basically everything is about pricing and cost. So first of all, how do you put your brains to a strategy that ideally combines existing core competencies that you have in a company, so you don't have to build them up from scratch, existing industry know-how, and how can you combine differentiation with lower cost to make a new market that is not competed yet, or where there's basically as little or no competition. So that's the strategy level. Then you have the people level. On a corporate startup, in most of the cases, you don't have founders that started or ignited this idea. So you might have a management team that has been put in to this startup and tasked with growing it out of a corporate initiative. So the issue here could be that they are lacking motivation or intrinsic motivation compared to a startup that is self-funded or self-created. So how do you align the incentives of these managing directors or corporate founders with the incentives of the company as a whole? So that is the main challenge. And question is, can you align them through more than just your typical economic reward? So ideally, you find very motivated founders that see a purpose, have a vision, and actually have a belief that they're doing something that is relevant, because otherwise they might burn the candle after 1 year or even less. So you want founders that are long-term motivated and not just driven by economic incentives on a people level. And on an economic level, I think one of the challenges is that when you talk about corporations, you have budgets and you have investment streams that have a due date. So I have this budget for this amount of time and I want to reach this goal. So the challenge for corporate startups in the first phase, of course, as everyone, is how can we validate product market fit? And ideally, how many tries do we have with the existing budget to prove it before we run out of budget and we might get the initiative closed down completely? So as opposed to your typical normal startup that seeks additional investment rounds, in a corporate startup, it might be over if you don't prove product market fit with this existing budget. So the challenge here for venture architects or the managing directors is, how can I use this budget? How can I put the money to best use and get as many iterations as possible out of it? And of course, processes like, or ideas like lean startup do help. If product market fit is already achieved, then there's a different challenge, meaning we have approved, or we got an investment approved for now the scaling phase. So now the challenge is, in most cases, how can we, as quickly as possible in this ideally uncontested market space, get as much market share as possible? So it's now a question of speed. And so now we're moving from the value hypothesis to the scaling hypothesis, and how fast can we ramp this up before potential competitors come into the market and it becomes a contested market. Now the challenge is, how do we scale? How do we set up processes like people, like execution, like cash, to keep ourselves ahead of the game? And how can we, on one hand, burn this cash fast, but put it to the right use, meaning acquiring additional users, acquiring additional customers, increasing customer lifetime value, and having them in a system before, the rest of the competition comes in? And how do we stay ahead of the game? So those are the main challenges of corporate startups compared to your typical normal startup.